There are some stars that light up the night sky not because they burn the brightest, but because they burn the fastest. They appear unexpectedly in the shadows of giants. They rise quietly but fiercely, defying every expectation, every doubt, and every odds stacked against them. And just when the world begins to notice, just when we finally understand what we've been witnessing, that star is gone. Tonight, we remember one such star, not for his fame, not for the trophies, not for headlines or scandals, but for the way he played, with heart, with silence, and with fire. This is the story of Diogo Jota. Born in the forgotten corners of Gondomar, Portugal, forged in the dust of second-tier academies, refined on the rough pitches of English football, and finally ignited at Anfield, where his quiet brilliance became undeniable. He was not the loudest voice on the field. He was not the flashiest name on the team sheet. But when the whistle blew and the game began, Jota transformed into a storm, precise, relentless, and always unexpected. And then, one evening, just before a new season, in a car on a Spanish highway, that flame was extinguished, but not forgotten. Because when someone plays with that much soul, when someone gives more than they take, they don't vanish. They live on, in memories, in stadiums, in every heart they touched. So dim the lights, take a deep breath, and join me as we walk the path of a man who never asked for attention, but earned the love of millions. This is the legacy of Diogo Jota, and this is how it all began. Diogo José Teixeira da Silva, the boy the world would come to know as Diogo Jota, was born on December 4th, 1996, in the quiet town of Massarelos, near Porto, Portugal. But it was in Gondomar, a modest municipality tucked away on the banks of the Douro River, where his roots truly took hold. Gondomar was not the kind of place that birthed footballing legends. It was a place of hard work, modest dreams, and narrow streets where children chased tattered balls long before they could spell their own names. And it was there, among those cracked pavements and crumbling concrete pitches, that Diogo first learned to dance with the ball. From the very beginning, football was more than a pastime. It was a language. Diogo spoke it fluently before he ever learned his times tables. While others kicked for fun, he played with purpose. A small boy with a quiet demeanor, Diogo wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. But when the ball touched his feet, everything changed. He moved differently, controlled, intentional, like the ball was part of his own nervous system. His style was never about tricks or theatrics. It was about timing, intelligence, and a sharp instinct that would become his trademark. At 9 years old, he joined the local club, Gondomar SC, a humble team in Portugal's third tier. No one expected fame to come from there. But Diogo wasn't looking for the spotlight. He was looking for a chance, and he got it, one grueling training session at a time. While other kids went home to cartoons and comfort, Diogo stayed behind, practicing, perfecting, waiting. By the time he was 16, scouts had begun to notice, not because he scored the most goals, but because he moved like he understood the game in ways boys his age simply didn't. At 17, he signed with Paços de Ferreira, a small club in the Primeira Liga. It was a bold leap, from dusty youth pitches to the top division of Portuguese football. And yet, Jota didn't just survive the transition, he thrived in it. In his first season, he was promoted to the senior team. For many, the pressure of that moment would be overwhelming, but not for Jota. In February 2015, he made his professional debut and just weeks later scored his first goal in the Primeira Liga. At only 18, he became the youngest player in the club's history to do so. The whispers began. The quiet boy from Gondomar, he was different, and still, he kept his head down. He wasn't chasing headlines. He was chasing improvement. Game after game, he sharpened his skills, learned to adapt, to anticipate, to strike with surgical precision. Coaches praised his discipline, his maturity, his refusal to settle. There was no arrogance in him, only hunger. And hunger in football is everything. In 2016, Atletico Madrid came calling, one of Spain's biggest clubs, a dream offer. But even in that whirlwind, Jota remained grounded. He knew he wasn't ready for the roar of the Vicente Calderón. Not yet. Instead of basking in the lights of La Liga, he accepted a loan move to FC Porto, back home, where he could grow without losing himself. That season, he scored vital goals, learned under pressure, and earned respect. Then came the next twist. Another loan, this time to England, to Wolverhampton Wanderers, a club with ambition but still clawing its way out of the championship. For some, it looked like a step down. For Diogo, it was a new challenge, a new battlefield. And he embraced it with open arms. At Wolves, Jota became a storm. He adapted to the English game like it was second nature, physical, fast-paced, unforgiving. He wasn't the biggest or strongest, but he was relentless. In his debut season, he scored 17 goals and became a key figure in leading Wolves back to the Premier League. A boy from Gondomar, now roaring under English skies. But his journey had only just begun. Wolves' war and the Premier League. The championship is a battlefield, grueling, unrelenting, and unforgiving. It demands not just skill, but resilience. When Diogo Jota arrived at Wolverhampton Wanderers in 2017 on loan from Atletico Madrid, many questioned if he could handle the chaos of English football's second tier. But those who knew him, truly knew him, understood one thing. Diogo didn't flinch. He adapted. Under the watchful eye of Nuno Espirito Santo, a Portuguese manager with vision and intensity, Wolves were undergoing a transformation. Backed by ambitious ownership and guided by a rising generation of Iberian talent, the club was setting its sights higher than just survival. And Diogo Jota was right at the center of that storm. He didn't take long to make his mark. Swift, clinical, and endlessly tireless, Jota terrorized defenses. He wasn't just a winger or a striker. He was both. He ghosted into spaces defenders didn't expect, cut through back lines like a blade through fog. In a league defined by brute force and long balls, Diogo brought precision and flair. 17 goals. That was his tally by the end of the season. 17 goals that helped lift Wolves to the top of the championship and secure their return to the Premier League after 6 long years. But Jota's contribution wasn't just about numbers. He had become a symbol of the club's rebirth, of a new identity rooted in technique, unity, and unrelenting work ethic. The fans saw it. They felt it. The name Diogo Jota began to echo through Molineux like a battle cry. When the loan ended, Wolves wasted no time. They made his move permanent. Diogo Jota, the quiet boy from Gondomar, was now officially a Premier League player. But the Premier League is a different beast. The pace quicker, the tackles harder, the spotlight blinding. And yet, once again, Jota rose to the challenge. In Wolves' return season, he scored a hat-trick against Leicester City, a moment that sealed his place in the club's folklore. He became one of the few Portuguese players to net a Premier League hat-trick, joining elite company. He also formed a formidable partnership with Raul Jimenez. Together, they became one of the most dangerous attacking duos in the league. While Jimenez battled in the box, Jota danced around it, slicing, pressing, finishing. Their chemistry was instinctive, electric, and it wasn't just domestic football where he thrived. In the UEFA Europa League, Wolves embarked on a journey few expected. Jota shone on the continental stage, scoring back-to-back hat-tricks and becoming one of the tournament's standout stars. For the first time in years, Wolverhampton was feared, not just in England, but across Europe. And at the heart of that fear was a 5'10" forward who played like he was 7 feet tall in spirit. Yet, even as he soared, Diogo never lost his humility. He trained hard, stayed grounded, and never sought the spotlight. He didn't need it. His game spoke for itself. And slowly, whispers began again. Bigger clubs were watching. The way he moved, the way he read the game, the way he struck the ball without hesitation or waste. This wasn't just a good player. This was a complete forward in the making. Then, in September 2020, the call came from Anfield. Jurgen Klopp had seen enough. Liverpool, the reigning champions of England, didn't need just another star. They needed a weapon. Someone who could step in, push the front three, challenge the status quo. Diogo Jota was that player. And just like that, the boy from Gondomar was headed to Merseyside. But this new chapter in red was not the end of his story. It was just another beginning. Red Thunder, the Liverpool years. There are transfers in football that feel like whispers, quiet, speculative, uncertain. And then there are those that rumble beneath the surface and strike like lightning. Diogo Jota's move to Liverpool in September 2020 was the latter. Quietly negotiated, swiftly executed, and yet destined to make an impact that no one could ignore. He wasn't the headline. Not at first. Liverpool already had its trident, Salah, Mane, Firmino, a holy trinity that had brought the Reds a Champions League trophy and a long-awaited Premier League crown. Fans expected rotation, a substitute, a promising backup, but what they got was disruption. What they got was fire. From his very first minutes in a red shirt, Jota didn't just fit in. He elevated the game. His debut came against Arsenal, and within minutes, he was on the score sheet. The movement, the timing, the ruthless finish, it was vintage Jota. But now he was doing it on the grandest stage of them all, under the blinding lights of Anfield. What followed was an explosion. In the Champions League group stages, he scored a hat trick against Atalanta, becoming only the 9th Liverpool player in history to do so. Each goal was a masterclass in instinct, one-touch finishes, runs into space, and a hunger that seemed almost insatiable. The press began calling him the perfect Klopp player. Tireless, smart, selfless, lethal. He wasn't just a winger or a striker. He was an enigma, a player who played with the tenacity of a defensive midfielder, the vision of a playmaker, and the killer edge of a poacher. Klopp, ever expressive, described him as a pressing monster. High praise from a man who demands everything. But it wasn't just about goals. It was about how he changed the tempo. Whenever Jota was on the pitch, Liverpool's rhythm shifted. He pressed higher, moved quicker, and found angles no one else saw. He turned dead plays into chances and half chances into goals. The Anfield crowd, though often watching from home during the COVID-19 restrictions, felt it. A new pulse, a new gear. Injuries came, as they often do in modern football. A twisted knee during a Champions League match in Denmark sidelined him for months. But even in absence, his presence was felt. Liverpool struggled without him. Form dipped, results faltered, the front line seemed suddenly incomplete. And when he returned, it was like thunder rolling back into a quiet sky. He picked up where he left off with the same drive, the same fire. By the time the 2021-2022 season arrived, Jota was no longer a rotation option. He was a starter. He bagged goals against Manchester United, Arsenal, Everton, rivals, giants, anyone in his path. He finished the season as Liverpool's second highest scorer behind only Salah. And when trophies were on the line, Jota delivered. Penalties and shootouts, assists in crunch moments, quiet excellence beneath the roar. And yet Diogo remained Diogo. No theatrics, no entourage, just quiet determination and a love for the game. Off the pitch, he was a gamer, a calm soul who enjoyed FIFA tournaments and spending time with family. On the pitch, he was a storm. As Liverpool battled on 4 fronts, League, FA Cup, League Cup, and Champions League, Jota was ever present. He wasn't the face of the club, but he was its spine in key moments. A goal here, an assist there, a tireless sprint in the 90th minute. Klopp trusted him. The fans adored him. In a team of stars, Diogo Jota became something rarer, essential. And yet, the road ahead was long. The Premier League never rests. The weight of expectation never fades. But for a boy who began his journey in a quiet suburb of Portugal, who rose through Gondomar and Passos in Porto, who braved the brutality of the championship and rose to conquer Europe's elite, there was nothing to fear. Because Diogo Jota wasn't just playing at the highest level, he belonged there. Setbacks and storms, battling injuries and adversity. Football is not just about brilliance. It's not just about goals and glory. It's about how you respond when the game turns its back on you. For Diogo Jota, the roar of the crowd was sometimes replaced by the silence of hospital rooms, the endless cycle of rehabilitation, and the haunting question every athlete faces: will I come back the same? After a blistering start with Liverpool, Jota was on fire. His form had ignited hope, revived belief, and forced his name into every starting 11 conversation. But the game, as always, demands its toll. In December 2020, during a dead rubber Champions League match against FC Midtjylland, one he arguably didn't even need to play, Jota twisted awkwardly. The diagnosis, a knee injury. Out for nearly 3 months. The timing was cruel. Liverpool, entering the heart of the season, began to suffer. Injuries piled up. Confidence waned. The forward line misfired. And while fans focused on the absence of Van Dijk and Henderson, many quietly acknowledged that Jota's injury had sucked the oxygen from the front three. Without his pressing, his link-up, his uncanny knack for breaking deadlocks, the Reds faltered. Behind the scenes, Jota entered the lonely world of rehab. Days blurred into weeks. Ice baths, strength work, resistance bands, treadmill runs. The rhythm of a player is broken not just physically, but mentally. While teammates train and compete, the injured watch. Always watching, always waiting. But Diogo Jota didn't sulk. He worked, tirelessly, quietly. He returned in the spring of 2021, sharper than expected, hungrier than ever. He scored against Arsenal, again against Manchester United. He was back, but the game wasn't done testing him. The following season brought more brilliance, but also more bruises. A calf strain here, a hamstring pull there, and then, in late 2022, a devastating blow. Just weeks before the FIFA World Cup in Qatar, Jota limped off the pitch during a game against Manchester City. His face said it all. Not frustration, resignation. The injury ruled him out of the World Cup. For any player, missing a tournament of that magnitude is a dagger. For Jota, who had fought so hard, climbed so far, it was a silent heartbreak. He had been instrumental in Portugal's qualifying campaign. Now, he would watch it unfold from his couch. Still, he didn't complain. Not publicly, not bitterly. His social media post was humble. After such a good night at Anfield, mine ended in the worst way. I will be one more supporting from the outside, club, and country. That was Jota. Always team first, always grounded. Recovery was longer this time, months. But once again, when he returned, he made the pitch feel like home. In April 2023, after over a year without scoring due to injury gaps, he broke the drought in style, netting twice against Leeds United. The celebrations were wild, cathartic. Even his usually composed demeanor cracked with joy. Through all of it, Jota's resilience became his greatest weapon. Injuries tried to sideline him. They tried to make him doubt, to shake the foundation he had built his career on. But every time he limped, he learned. Every time he fell, he fought. In a sport where careers are broken by bad luck, Jota refused to be defined by it. He made pain his tutor, turned setbacks into fuel, and walked back onto the pitch not as a victim, but as a survivor. And in doing so, he proved something that statistics can't measure, and fans sometimes forget. Courage isn't always about scoring the winner. Sometimes it's just about showing up again, after the world told you not to. The silent assassin, playing for Portugal. There is a weight that comes with wearing the national colors, a history, a legacy. In Portugal, that legacy is stitched with the golden thread of legends, Eusebio, Rui Costa, Luis Figo, Cristiano Ronaldo. To step into that lineage is to carry not just a jersey, but the hopes of a nation that breathes football like air. For Diogo Jota, it was never about fanfare, never about headlines. It was about belonging. About showing that a boy from Masarelos, who once juggled a ball on narrow cobblestone streets, had earned his place on the world's biggest stage. Jota's journey with the Seleção didn't begin with fireworks. His first senior cap came in 2019 at age 22. Portugal was in the midst of transition, still reliant on the titanic presence of Cristiano Ronaldo, but hungry for a new generation to rise. Jota was quiet, focused, and fiercely effective. He didn't shout for attention. He let his boots speak. By 2020, he had scored his first international goal against Croatia in the Nations League. But it was in the lead-up to UEFA Euro 2020 that he truly came alive. Trusted by Fernando Santos to start alongside Ronaldo, Jota formed part of an attacking trident that brought pace, precision, and pressing power. In Portugal's opening match of the tournament, Jota scored against Hungary, calmly slotting home after a swift counterattack. It wasn't just a goal, it was a statement. Yet for all his efforts, Portugal's run at the Euros was short-lived. Eliminated in the round of 16 by Belgium, the dream was over too soon. But Jota had made his presence known. He had shown that he could not only fit into a team of superstars, but elevate it. The World Cup, however, would become the ghost that haunted him. In 2022, after years of climbing the ranks, Jota was poised to shine at the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. He was in form. He was ready. And then, in October, disaster. A calf injury against Manchester City ended his dream. Portugal would go on to play without him. They reached the quarterfinals, with Gonçalo Ramos making headlines and Ronaldo bidding an emotional farewell. Jota watched it all from afar. Not bitter, but broken. He never publicly lamented his absence. Instead, he turned his heartbreak into hunger. He returned stronger, faster, more ruthless. And in every match since, Whether against minnows or giants, Jota has played like a man with a point to prove. What makes him unique in the Portuguese squad isn't just his versatility. He can play as a winger, a false nine, or even deeper when needed. It's his mindset. While others dazzle with flair, Jota slices through defenses with cold precision. He doesn't perform for the camera. He performs for the scoreboard, a silent assassin in a team of fireworks. Off the pitch, he remains grounded, a family man, a quiet professional. But on the pitch, he's a storm wrapped in silence, a player who doesn't need to shout because his impact roars loud enough. And as Portugal eyes future tournaments, with a new generation rising and Ronaldo's shadow slowly fading, Diogo Jota stands as one of the pillars of what comes next, not as a replacement, but as a continuation, a symbol of evolution, because every era needs its warriors, and every warrior needs a moment. Jota's moment is coming, and this time, nothing will keep him from the light. More than a footballer, the man behind the jersey. By now, we know the athlete. We followed the stats, watched the goals, celebrated the triumphs, and mourned the setbacks. But behind every sprint, every pass, every precise finish, there's a man the cameras barely see. Diogo Jota, the professional, the striker, the footballer, is only part of the story. Because long before the roar of the crowds, before Anfield lights or Portuguese dreams, there was a quiet boy from Porto with big dreams, humble beginnings, and a life shaped by family, focus, and something rarely seen in modern sport, balance. Born Diogo José Teixeira da Silva, he grew up in Massarelos, a district nestled in the heart of Porto. His family wasn't wealthy, but they were rich in the ways that mattered: love, support, values. His father, a football enthusiast, was the first to recognize the spark in his son's game. But there were no grand academies or golden pathways in those early days, just street football, concrete pitches, and a raw, relentless will to play. Jota's rise through the ranks was never adorned with viral clips or media frenzy. He didn't break onto the scene with global fanfare. Instead, he built himself in silence. Even today, when you speak to those who knew him as a teenager, one word echoes: discipline. He was always the first to arrive, the last to leave. Never the loudest voice, but often the most determined. Yet life isn't only about the pitch. Away from football, Jota is calm, introverted, almost shy. He prefers quiet evenings with his family to wild nights out. In 2021, he became a father, something that changed him even more than football ever could. In interviews, he doesn't speak in cliches or media-trained jargon. He speaks thoughtfully, honestly, and when necessary, sparingly. And then there's the gamer. Yes, Jota has become something of a legend in the FIFA esports community. During lockdowns and injury recovery periods, he turned to PlayStation, not for distraction, but for competition. He didn't just play, he dominated. He even briefly topped the global FUT Champions leaderboard and once beat a professional player 30-0. Liverpool fans joked he could fill in for the esports squad if the first team ever needed him to. But perhaps the most revealing truth about Diogo Jota isn't in his career statistics or gaming achievements. It's in how he treats the game. For Jota, football has always been a craft, not a circus. He plays not to entertain, but to perfect. His ambition is quiet, his ego nearly invisible. And in an age where players chase fame and brands, Jota continues to chase excellence. He's not flashy, he's not dramatic, but he's real. And that realness, authentic, unfiltered, uncompromising, is what makes him special. Whether he's ghosting past defenders at Anfield, slipping unnoticed into space for Portugal, or holding his child on a Sunday morning, Jota is always the same: present, committed, and quietly, unmistakably brilliant. In a world that demands noise, he offers precision. In a game obsessed with headlines, he builds legacy. Because when history looks back, it won't just see a footballer. It will see a man who let his game do the talking. A man who walked among giants, not as an echo, but as his own force of nature. This is Diogo Jota. More than a footballer, a modern warrior in silence. When the spotlight fades and the final whistle blows, the legacy of a player is not measured only in goals or trophies, but in the quiet flame they leave behind. A flame that burns not in stadium lights, but in the hearts of those who watched, who believed, who saw themselves in the rise of someone who never screamed for attention, but earned it through purpose. Diogo Jota's story isn't a blockbuster tale with wild controversies or tabloid drama. It's something rarer. It's the story of discipline in an age of distraction, of grit without the need for glory, of humility that still rises above the noise. He came from the streets of Porto, built his career in silence, and found his voice through his feet. He played with purpose, loved without pretense, and lived with a balance that eludes many in his world. As the world keeps spinning faster, as football becomes more spectacle than sport, figures like Jota remind us of something deeper, that greatness doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to show up, day after day, match after match, in training, in life, with quiet fire. His career is far from over, but even now we can look back and say, here is a man who gave the game more than just his talent. He gave it his integrity, and that will echo longer than any chant, outlast any headline, and remain, like all true legacies, not in what he said, but in who he was. Because Diogo Jota didn't just play football, he honored it.